What's going on there, guys? Good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster here on this Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 date, about 12:40 p.m. California time. The latest quake shows a 2.7 earthquake, the latest on the globe, well off the coast of the African region there, out there in the Atlantic Ocean, kind of on that plate boundary there between these fractures. Let's go ahead and check out some latest activity here from the USGS map before we go globally. I kind of want to cue in up here to the Pacific Northwest, where we're seeing quite a bit of swarming activity throughout the region, including Mount St. Helens. We'll go ahead and check that out here in a second, although if you notice, USGS not showing anything around Mount St. Helens. We do have some activity ramping up around Mount Rainier as well. This earthquake activity, a little swarm continuing here at about 9 kilometers, consistent depth there. 9 kilometers below the surface. Most of the earthquakes there below the 2.5 threshold, the largest a 2.3 so far, just about 5 miles or so from the summit to the southwest here around the Mount Rainier volcano. Also noticing a swarm of activity up north around the Devil's Mountain fault. It's going to be this fault system right here, kind of a lengthy fault system. Runs just to where the swarming is happening, around the Darrington, Washington area, over here to the Victoria region there in the BC area. Now that's kind of a lengthy system, right? And there's a little bit of background info on this fault system here, where there's a possibility of perhaps a 7.5 earthquake occurring here within about the last 2,000 years. Looking at a PowerPoint here from one of the emergency management teams up there in the Washington area, talks a little bit about the Devil's Mountain Fault, roughly about 7-8 miles long, runs east to west through the Darrington to the Vancouver Island area, Canada. It is an active fault with at least one earthquake about 2,000 years ago. And there's a little bit of estimates on the magnitude here. Some folks saying between about 7.0 to as large as 7.5 earthquake. Now that type of magnitude on that fault system right next to a large area such as Victoria could definitely do quite a bit of damage, and I think possibly even more damage than the Cascadia subduction zone would do, just due to the distance. 7.5 right underneath perhaps the Victoria area with this fault system. I highly believe it would do more damage locally in the vicinity of the Victoria area. And again, like I said, this is pretty heavily populated region, and that fault system does go north here throughout the Strait of Juan de Fuca, north of Seattle, well north of Seattle, and over here to the east around the Darrington area, where this swarming activity is kind of kicking up. It's kicking up on the eastern section of it. So far we've seen about 7 earthquakes, the largest a 3.6, and the depths here, they're all over the place. So 3 to 0, some up to 11 kilometers deep. So a little bit of adjustment going on specifically on that fault system, which we got to watch pretty closely. There's a whole bunch of articles about this Devil's Mountain Fault and the frightening implications for Victoria. This was put out in 2020. I'm not going to read all of this. I'll include a couple links here in the description of this video below. But these guys also talking about magnitude 7.5 could possibly be produced on this fault system. Looks like, and as I mentioned, it was about 2,000 years ago. They have proof of at least one quake, and 2,000 years ago, that's quite a bit of accumulated stress rate in this region. So watching this area pretty closely. We have seen overall an increase in activity here. All this swarming activity comes after quite a few days of tremor uptick. And I want to point out the tremor activity we seen last night here along the Cascadia subduction zone. Pretty large numbers, 620 epicenters. Now, it'd be a little bit different if we seen 620 epicenters up here, specifically around the Victoria area. Sometimes it does that. Every 14 months or so, we get this swarm of tremors, right? I've kind of covered this quite a bit on this channel. But it's not just in one spot. This tremor activity is not just in one spot. It's almost on the entire area of the Cascadia subduction zone, from the north part down to the south part. So some wide, broad area of subduction or tremor going on here across the Cascadia subduction zone. Got to watch that pretty closely when we start seeing the entire interface of the subduction zone move like this. That's I think could be a telltale sign of something possibly coming here to the region. We got to watch that. Either way, it is having an effect inland. Got to remember the subduction here is ultimately affecting the North American plate and the volcanoes there throughout the Cascades. I want to pull up Mount Rainier first and check out the seismograph activity that's kind of occurring near that. Let me show you guys real quick here. Once again, just to the southwest of Mount Rainier, about 5, maybe not even 5 miles, somewhere around there. A little swarm of activity kicking up here. We'll go ahead and check out this one here. It's kind of right at the summit. A lot of times these stations are producing a bunch of errors. We'll see what they have as far as seismic activity goes. And we'll check a couple different seismographs. And there it is. There's some of the activity showing up. Even on this station here, about 5 miles away from the epicenter of the activity. Let's see what we got for the previous day here around the Mount Rainier area as well. Noticing a little swarm pattern. This is something similar to what we see on Mount St. Helens, although the USGS is reporting the activity now at Mount Rainier and not reporting any activity whatsoever there at Mount St. Helens. Even though we see it coming into the live seismographs, it's just not being reported there. We'll check Mount Rainier seismograph here in a second. I do want to pull up a station a little bit closer to the swarming area. We'll go ahead and back out of here a little bit. And let's see here. These guys, doesn't even look like the PNSN network folks are reporting that activity that's kicking off here. I don't see it up here on the map, so I'm surprised the USGS is right there. PNSN, nada. Showing some activity from a couple days ago and weeks past. Let's check out, see if we can access this one component short period seismogram here and see if we can get a little bit more detail on what's going on out here. It's much closer to the epicenter. Oh wow, look at that. Yeah, definitely being picked up pretty nicely here across the region. 3.6 near Granite Falls, so that must be I wonder if that's at 3.6 up here. Possibly, yes, in Washington that it's picking up. That's kind of a distant earthquake, although it's picking up really nicely here on the seismograph, so I'm uncertain on that. Either way, it looks like maybe there was a back-to-back double tap earthquake. Maybe this is the first one, or maybe there was an earthquake here locally first, and then the 3.6 kicking up. Either way, definitely seismograph showing some activity there. There's a couple other smaller ones in the vicinity localized to this volcano there at Mount Rainier. I'm going to check out the previous day. Some of these other lines that you guys are seeing right there, not for sure what those are. They don't look like typical earthquakes, although they could be ice quakes. Not for sure how much snow is up there on Mount Rainier, but a lot of times we do see that. The previous day earthquake activity looks to be somewhat minimal, not a whole lot, maybe a couple small ones right here in the red and blue. Trying to decipher from some of the noise right there as well. But these other ones that take a spike down, they don't look like typical earthquakes there. And then again, they could be some type of ice quakes. Let's go ahead and check out. So we know Mount Rainier is somewhat active there in terms of seismic activity within the last 24 hours. Mount Rainier or Mount St. Helens. Go back over here to Mount St. Helens. And we'll check out this seismograph station. We know it's been pretty active here recently because of the activity kicking up. We've seen it on the live stream. That's kind of why I like to run the live data so we can see it come in. We know there's earthquake activity kicking up here. This is the dome station right up top. Little earthquake activity here earlier this morning, it looks like, within the last 6-7 hours or so. A couple smaller ones as well in the map. But notice again, I kind of like to point out these lines here. They're a lot smaller, right? They're a lot smaller than normal, and we're used to them kind of looking, you know, a little bit fatter, if you will, in terms of the signature of the line, the seismograph lines themselves. In that case, if they are smaller, like they are now, these earthquakes will appear smaller on the graph. But there's definitely one that pretty much showed up regardless of their sensitivity right here overnight. A couple other smaller ones as well, including these little bitty specks. I know they're hard to see by the arrow, but those are indeed microquakes as well. When the graph is kind of tuned like this, a little bit more prominent and detailed, right, in the seismograph needle drawing, if you will. You know, if you guys seen a seismograph, you know that line, the needle kind of draws on the graph, and when there's an earthquake, it moves and whatnot. And this here, a little bit more defined. You can see more of these earthquakes happening here at Mount St. Helens. And it's pretty active yesterday, no doubt. Quite a few we've seen come into the live seismograph stations. And again, USGS not reporting on this one, though. They've completely stopped reporting activity there at Mount St. Helens. Why, I don't know. But also the PNSN network, I don't believe they're showing anything either. From the last couple days, they've completely stopped reporting as well. Last earthquake was on the 13th. And even then, it was only 2 out of maybe 20 that was on the map. So these guys not reporting it here in about past 4 days. I know I say that a lot, and I've seen a couple comments saying, man, every time he says that USGS is not reporting, and if I were to take a shot, I'd be drunk by now. Well, you're probably right. But they're not reporting it. So I'm here to report on that lack of reporting, but also to report here on the earthquake activity taking place at a couple volcanoes throughout the Cascades. Volcanic activity? Well, any activity at a volcano would be considered volcanic, right? As far as magma, I don't see it. No magma intrusion, no uplift in the GPS displacements. Just earthquake activity for now. But it is a sizable increase throughout the Pacific Northwest, and I do believe it's fully associated, not only the swarming activity here along the Devil's Mountain Fault, but the activity throughout the Cascades that we've been seeing recently, as far as the earthquakes at Volcano, related to the subduction here. The tremor activity does play a major part on what's going on here, not only at the surface levels, but down deep, down dip, well below the tremor level, which would mean volcanic activity, right? You get down there, you start getting the molten rock and whatnot, and that could possibly push up some, some magma and create these, get these volcanoes active. It's been a while since we've seen any volcanic activity throughout the Cascades. Of course, Mount St. Helens, really, right? Pretty much the last one. But Mount Rainier, who knows? One of these days, these things will be pretty active. Will it be tomorrow? Will it be today? Who knows? That's why we could kind of keep an eye on the GPS displacements, and we've gone through all those before, and there's not a whole lot popping up. We'll go ahead and check out Mount Rainier while we're on it real quick with the GPS stations. This is the map I use. It's a pretty cool map that monitors GPS locations worldwide. Not even joking. You can check out volcanoes in Hawaii, Australia, or not volcanoes in Australia, but GPS displacements. And we're going to go ahead and check out Mount Rainier real quick and see what we got. I know Mount Rainier does not have a lot of seismograph stations up here at it, or not seismograph stations, but GPS stations. There's a couple, nothing specifically at the summit, but we're going to go ahead and check out to the west here. And some of this data is old. Look at that, 2010. So stand by for a second while I find one. Hopefully that will be newish. Here's one that kind of looks new, kind of on the north side. But like I say, I wish there was more around the summit area, because sometimes we can have uplift in an area opposite of where these GPS stations are. And looking at the trend here to 2022, eastward displacement going down. Same for the north. Vertical displacement right here in MM shows, well, at least to 2022, kind of a decline, and then an uplift a little bit as well towards the beginning of 2022. But no major vertical displacement that I can see in throughout those graphs right there. But we will definitely keep on checking on it. Because there's definitely a lot of activity kind of ramping up here in the Pacific Northwest. One earthquake up here outside of the Butte Falls, Oregon. That was just a little bit ago. 1.4, pretty deep though, at 10 kilometers. We did see some further movement here in the Gorda Plate, center of the Gorda Plate, 2.6 at 10 kilometers. Nothing being reported here throughout the northwestern part of California, but I was watching the Petrolia station, a live seismograph station that monitors the activity there, and no doubt over the last, well, between last night and this morning, I've seen a couple spikes popping up here into Northern California. Again, not being reported Only a fraction of the quakes that do happen, folks, are reported out there. I can guarantee you that, and I think you guys pretty much figured that out for yourself. Mount Lassen is seeing low activity as well. If you notice the uptick in earthquake activity throughout not only the volcanoes and the Cascades, but also there in the northern Sierra Nevada. Over the last 7 days or so, we've seen a little bit of activity kick up here at Mount Lassen. We checked the displacement as well. Looks about the same as far as GPS movement goes. And these earthquakes are all very small, but nonetheless a noticeable trend in earthquakes around the volcanoes there throughout the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. Largest one we've seen within the last week, about a 1.9, and some of these shallow, some of them somewhat deep as well. But for now, just some light earthquake activity. We did check out the seismographs in that location as well. We can go ahead and check out the Mount Lassen seismograph station here if it's going to let me. USGS hasn't blocked me yet, because they better not. It's all I'm public reporting here, guys. USGS. Let's see what we got. Here's the Lassen Volcanic Center from the USGS. Everything's green. Last eruption here at Mount Lassen was back in 1914, 1917 time frame, well before my time, but I did see quite a few pictures of it from the Red Bluff area, downtown Red Bluff. Pretty spectacular view when that thing was erupting. So let's see what we got for there's GPS stations, seismic activity, a little bit of earthquake here. This is the last 24 hours, it looks like, and today overnight doesn't look like a whole lot. Excuse me. Yesterday there's those 2 earthquakes, it looks like, that they were reporting. But far as any swarm activity going here at Mount Lassen, I just don't see it. In fact, it looks a little quiet compared to Mount Rainier and the Mount St. Helens region. So again, this is Mount Lassen seismograph. We'll back out of here, go back to the earthquake activity. We'll check out, see what's going on here in the California region. Aside from the earthquakes at the volcanoes, it's fairly quiet throughout the rest of Northern California. Of course, Cobb Mountain, this is very typical hydrothermal operation procedures out there in that region. And a little Bay Area earthquake activity on the, looks like just off the Calaveras fault system here. And again, another player in producing major quakes throughout the Bay Area. Eastern Sierra Nevada, pretty quiet. Ridgecrest getting in on a few earthquakes, although nothing spectacular. One earthquake around the Garlock fault structure last night, 1.4. And Southern California, looks like a typical day. No major swarming to report. This here north of Desert Hot Springs is, let's see when this kicked off. Looks like there was a little bit this morning as well, but most of it is from yesterday, just off the San Andreas fault system here to the north by about, looks like about 5 miles or so. Specifically on the San Andreas fault, not a whole lot going on here, including the Brawley seismic zone. Things looking pretty calm in that region for now. Up through Utah into Yellowstone. We'll go ahead and check out the Yellowstone overview real quick. I do enjoy this site very much, and I have contributed to this gentleman's cause and keeping this site up and running when they do ask for donations. Even if it's a couple bucks, it all does add up, right? Looking at specific stations here throughout the park, we're getting a little bit of that earthquake activity once again here around the eastern section of the park. I did email a gentleman there at the USGS Yellowstone volcano area, and I haven't checked my email this morning. I do kind of want to check it out and see if anybody's messaged me back. Yeah, actually he did. So let's go ahead and stand by for just a second while I pull up this email that this gentleman emailed me. Took him a day or so to email me back, but hey, I appreciate the definitely appreciate the feedback. So stand by for just a second here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this email so you guys can see what's going on. It's pretty lengthy as well. Look at this. So Michael Poland, I do appreciate the email, by the way. If you guys are watching there, I messaged him asking about a few signatures on the Yellowstone seismographs, right? And we're kind of looking at these prominent earthquakes here on the eastern section of the park where that 4.2 struck. So this guy states, I apologize for the late reply. I was driving home from Yellowstone yesterday, so was offline all day. I was in the park for the past week, including when the 4.2 occurred, but I didn't feel it, although a few of my colleagues did. Seems that you had to be sitting still to sense it, but I was out for a run, so I missed it. I think the reason you aren't seeing more located quakes, despite the fact that there are obviously a few that have occurred, is that the magnitude of completeness for that part of the park is higher than for the other areas. Oh, so that's why I was telling you about the preliminary earthquake reporting. Okay, let's see. University of Utah only reports earthquakes to the national catalog operated by USGS when they can be located. This means that they need to be recorded on enough seismic stations for solid first motion picks to be made. If you look at the map of the seismic station in Yellowstone, you can see that the east side of the park only has a few stations. As a result, smaller earthquakes might not be located because they aren't recorded on enough stations. The overall magnitude of completeness for the Yellowstone area is 1.5, meaning that all earthquakes 1.5 and larger can be located. Events smaller than that can be located in areas of the park where seismic coverage is denser, but that won't be true every place. Okay? Let's see here. May 11th, 4.2 kicked off. You can see that there are a number of small aftershocks, but only a few of these were large enough to be located. There's a good description of how earthquakes are located at Yellowstone. That's one of our weekly Yellowstone Caldera Chronicle articles. We have articles on determining magnitudes and whatnot, and how Yellowstone seismic network is operated. Pretty cool. So it looks like there's obviously earthquake activity, but there's not getting to that threshold. And when there's earthquake activity right here in the eastern side of the park, just as Michael was explaining, that if they can't locate them, I guess they're not set up. They won't be issued there to the catalog, to the USGS. So we know there's earthquake activity. That's kind of what I'm here to do and report, because it is showing up across the park here along the western section as well. See these two earthquakes on this map also showing up on these graphs, on this graph right here. So I know that's not localized interference. But Michael, I do appreciate your email there. Mike Poland of the USGS, scientist in charge of Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. So thank you for that email, and no worry on the late reply. So looking back at Yellowstone, just got to go with the raw data and go from there. That's kind of what we do here on this channel. As far as localized earthquake swarming going right now, I'm not seeing it. Looking at the seismograph stations here, we did have a little bit of activity yesterday, kind of in the mix of all this clutter. You can see a couple of those small earthquakes there in the red lines, mostly around the Hebgen Lake area to the west, but generally no major swarming kicking off right now throughout the region. All right, getting back to the USGS map here. Low activity in Oklahoma and the Kansas region once again. Still seeing some activity out here around the New Madrid zone. If you notice here within the last 7 days or so, been a little active. Not a huge number, but about 8 earthquakes or so, centered mostly around this area of the New Madrid zone. Seismic hazard zone shows you that area of the greatest seismic hazard, which is in in this color. It's kind of an ugly yellow-brown color. It's going to be this center piece right here, where this earthquake activity is occurring. Most of it there between 9 and 12 kilometers or so. No major quakes, all of these below the 2.5 threshold around the New Madrid zone. Looking at the rest of the area, let's get off the 7 days. Doesn't show a whole lot throughout the eastern part of the country. Down in Puerto Rico, things seem to be tapering off. Only a handful of quakes around the southwestern edge, with the subduction zones here of the trough to the south and up here along the Puerto Rico Trench, creating that little activity. And see what we got for the South America region. A little activity into the Peru-Chile Trench once again around Salta, Argentina. Pretty deep movement there at 211 kilometers into the Peru-Chile Trench. South Sandwich Islands did see a little deep earthquake here on the southern segment. 4.9, 85 kilometers there, and the Atlantic Ocean did see some movement here around the Ascension Island area, 4.9, and some activity once again well north of Iceland, out here around the Greenland Sea. We have been seeing a little swarm of activity here over the last Yeah, I think it's been over a week now. But there is some prior earthquake activity out there over the last couple days. Throughout the Middle East, a little bit of movement out around Iran, it looks like. A couple fours. Some deep earthquake out there in the mountains of Afghanistan. The big picture right now, I think, aside from the West Coast cascade activity kicking up here, is the swarm of movement here centered right around the Philippine plate once again. Getting that squeeze going on there between the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate. A lot of trenches here, a lot of major players in deep earthquake activity. Still seeing a swarm of movement here on the northern section of the Philippine plate. Some of it pretty deep as well, 144 kilometers for this earthquake, 4.5, the latest that occurred earlier this morning. Overnight, though, some surface quaking, very shallow activity there in the 5 range. So got to watch this pretty closely. This whole area has been under quite a bit of stress recently with all the 6s, the swarming of 5s and whatnot. If you recall, over the last 30 days, I'll go ahead and pull up the all magnitudes, and you guys see what I'm talking about here. Quite a few. We'll go to the 4.5 and above, and that kind of mellows out all the earthquakes. And then again, it's only 4.0 internationally here. But you can see quite a few 5s and some 6s all around this segment of the Philippine Trench. And generally, this whole area has been under the gun as far as stress and plate tectonics go in that region. Hawaii, let's go ahead and check out the big island out here. A little activity well north of the big island, it looks like. A little shallow earthquake, very shallow earthquake, 2.8 at 0.6 kilometers. As far as the mainland area here, this is very minimal in terms of earthquake activity. Only 6 earthquakes. Very not too often do we see this on the all magnitudes map here for this area of Hawaii. Looks like the largest so far, 2.2 within the last hour. Let's go ahead and check out the Earthquakes Canada real quick, see what's going on off the coast of the region here. This is the area I kind of watch for northern movement, or the area along the northern section of the Cascadia subduction zone. Plate boundaries here give us that region that I'm watching, and doesn't look like these guys are reporting too much along the northern area of the Cascadia. Up north here, got one earthquake here, it looks like into the Alaska region. This one here from yesterday with a 3.9. Space weather activity kicking up pretty good, I think. Here in the coming days, we'll see, I'm sure, possibly at least an upper M flare, if not an X flare, from this massive sunspot that is rotating in the view. It's a huge region of sunspots, and it's ginormous, let me tell you. A lot of intermixing here with 3014, and 3007 was looking a little bit more prominent and possibly producing some flaring yesterday. It has since kind of died off. Same with about 3010, but watching some new development here, 3016, and another new region north of that in the coming days. But I think the hot spot of activity will be this huge region of sunspots that will be rotating in the view here pretty soon. There's a coronal hole that is Earth directed that could amplify some solar wind for us in the coming days. Right now it is green across the board as far as the 3-day geomagnetic forecast goes. Very minimal conditions here with the KP indexes and the aurora probabilities. These guys are predicting, well, forecasting, and I think that's pretty accurate here. 15% chance of an X flare, M flare at 35% chance, C flare at 99% chance. Probability details kind of lays out the culprits in possibly producing any heightened activity, and these guys are looks like 3014 and 3007 here are the ones that could be the culprits in the coming days. 3014 going to be this area that I was kind of pointing out to you guys. 3007 they mentioned as well, but last night it looked a little bit more prominent, as I had mentioned. Today, not well, it could be a little bit over here to the eastern section of the sunspot, but we'll see how it goes, folks. I'm going to bounce out of here. Hope everyone has a good day. Coming up on 30 minutes. I didn't mean to keep it that long, but or record it that long, but I wanted to get that email in there too, since like I said, I just happened to see it this morning, so I read that to you guys live on the air. And again, I appreciate that, Michael, with the USGS on the feedback, and I will provide those links that he forwarded to me in the video description here below. So, all right, guys, have a good day. We will chat you guys a little bit later. Stay safe, everyone. Peace out.